Morning. I'm a walker arounder, so I'm going to turn the mic like this. One very interesting thing that you guys heard in the scripture reading just now was strong and courageous. That's very important because what we're going to talk about today is leadership. And to be a leader, you have to be strong and courageous. One of the many things that you have to be. Leadership is an interesting topic because it's something that we don't talk very much about sometimes. They don't teach us anything in high school necessarily in classes about how to be a leader or what to do and if you're in a leadership position of some kind. Just like they don't teach us how to write checks out of a checkbook all the time. We focus on other things instead. Leadership is something that you do learn, but it comes with experience and it comes by doing it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. There's a couple examples up here of leaders that have done things in our country. George Patton's my favorite. Military leader, won the war in Europe for the Allies in World War II. Very courageous leader, controversial, yes, but a very courageous leader and very capable. George Washington, of course, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, all excellent leaders. And the one that you might not recognize up in the upper right corner is actually Lee Iacocca, who ran Chrysler for a number of years and brought them out of bankruptcy and was able to turn that company around. In the midst of a recession and in the midst of incredible waste, he brought it around, came up with the idea for the minivan, produced small vehicles during a downturn in the economy when gas maybe wasn't as cheap as it would have been, and he saved the company. And it was done through leadership. Flip the slide, please. Okay, so a little bit about me, just so you know that I'm just not some guy spouting off up here, okay? I spent 20 years in the military. I just left the military last summer, almost a year ago. And while I was there, I saw a lot of good and bad leaders. And it's very interesting. You know, you can learn from the bad ones as much as you can the good ones. We've all experienced good ones and bad ones probably in our time. And there are good ones and bad ones. I learned from some of the best. I got lucky. But I learned from some bad ones too. I commanded squadrons twice, 500 plus or so people, which was very stressful. But I got a lot out of it. And it changed me as a human being and also as a leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that worked. Next, please. So, what happened with me is that over time, I picked up little nuggets here and there from different people, just little sayings and little hints and facts and pointers that I just kind of filed away in my brain. And all of them were good, and they were things that I remembered. One that probably sticks with me the most is I had an instructor in college when I was coming up through ROTC, and he said, always go with your gut because your gut is usually right. That was in 1992, he told me that. And that was something that has served me very, very well over the years, not just in my career, but in life. And I've discovered it to be true. So what happened is I learned even from the junior folks, people that worked for me when I was younger and coming up in the early stages of my career. A lot of the guys that worked for me were actually old enough to be my dad. So they'd been around for a while. And they gave me a lot of awesome pointers, great tips, and things like that. I just filed them all away. I learned a lot more actually from those guys than I did from the senior folks. Mainly because I didn't see the senior folks as much. But the guys that actually did the work, who worked for me, man, they'd been around, they'd worked with people for, 15, 20, 25 sometimes years, and they'd seen a lot of things, and they'd done a lot of things. And so I knew that even though I was in charge of them, that it would be smart for me to listen to those people. And in the end, really, they raised me more than anybody else did in terms of professional career. So I filed away a lot of things that they gave me as well. So what I did about 5 or 6 years ago is I came up, I just decided, I'm to a point now where I've got to write these down because there's so many of them, and I don't want to forget any of them. So I wrote them down. And I produced a Word document online and jockeyed around with it a little bit and changed things here and there, moved stuff around. And I came up with 30 that I kept. There was more than that, but the 30 that I kept were the good ones. And I didn't really make it for anybody but me. None of them were mine. None of these tips and pointers were mine. They were all somebody else's. I just didn't want to forget them. But as I developed this document, what I found was, man, there's some stuff here that's really good, and I probably ought to share it because it was great for me to have these things. It's probably great for somebody else to have these things too. So what I did is when I would sit down to do evaluations with with the guys that worked for me, I would pull out this list of 30 things, and I'd say, hey, here, I want you to take this with you and just read through it. And I explained to him what it was. None of it's mine, but these are really great things that I think that you can probably use in your professional career. After that, people responded to it so well, we hung it up in our office where they could see it. And then when I was getting ready to leave the military about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was contacted by an online blog who had gotten wind of it somehow. I still don't know how. And they said, hey, why don't you write an article about this? So I did. And I went online on a veterans blog website and picked up steam like I couldn't believe it. So I think I may develop it further, but I want to share some of those with you here today. All of them spoke to me, and I think that they will to you too. So the points at the beginning are kind of tactical, and by tactical I mean they're things that you can do every day when you're out there doing your job, or if you're in school and you're doing your work in school or whatever. But towards the end, they get a little bit more strategic in nature. And they can apply to a lot of things, not just your career, but also your life. They can apply to family and all kinds of other stuff. So I'm going to start small with you. And here's what we got. Anticipate questions, right? Anticipating questions is one of those things that leaders do. These are all things that leaders do. Leaders anticipate questions because when they talk to people, they have to know what people might ask them, right? It's really important if you're in a setting, a professional setting, where you've got to provide a presentation maybe to somebody like the big boss or something like that. You don't necessarily want to show all your cards right away, but you sure want to have the answers in your pocket because you know they're probably going to get asked, right? So it's good to have those things. That's a big one. Being part of the solution and not the problem. How many people, by a show of hands, have ever brought a problem to a teacher or an instructor or a boss and said, hey, this is it, man. I don't know what to do. Show of hands. A lot of people. I have. I admit it. But really what's important here is you have to be a part of the solution. So it's not wrong to say, hey, boss, there's a problem. But it is wrong to say, hey, boss, there's a problem, and then stop like you expect that individual to fix that problem for you. It doesn't work that way. You need to come up with solutions. This is what leaders do, okay? Leaders say, boss, we got this problem, and here's how I fixed it. It's done, okay? But I just wanted you to know. And your boss will say, man, great, that's awesome, thanks for fixing it. Or if it's a big problem that you can't make a decision on, then you say, hey, boss, we got this problem. Here's how I see us solving this problem. We got option 1, we got option 2, we got option 3. You provide courses of action, right? That's how it's done. Never, ever be part of the problem. Always be a part of that solution. The next one is bad news is like old fish. The reason bad news is like old fish is because it doesn't get better with age. Anybody ever heard that? So if something's wrong and you got to make somebody aware, you don't sit on it. You go make it known, right? Even if it's something bad, you have to do it because it's never going to get any better. So right at that front end is the best place for you to go to somebody, whether it's your boss or your instructor or whatever, and say, look, man, this happened. It's really bad. I'm going to fix it, but I need you to know. And you never know, your boss will probably, he might react and he might shoot the messenger or she. But the fact is now they know, and you can get started on fixing that problem. And you can get the support you need. You might need resources or whatever from your boss or from some organization. And in order to do that, you have to talk about the bad news. Don't show all your cards. I talked about that. When I say don't show all your cards, what I'm saying is you might have 10 answers in your hand, but you may only want to do 5 of them, right? If you show all your cards, and if you bring up something, it may result in something you don't want, like a decision. Do this instead, right? And you may already have a way ahead. Or it might be worse. It might cause you extra work. So you don't want to show all your cards unless you have a reason to. Keep them in your pocket. It's kind of like keeping that answer, anticipating those questions. Keep it in your pocket, and if it needs to be brought up, then you bring it up. So it's like playing poker. You don't want your opponent to see your cards, right? Okay, when you're in a leadership position, you must be visible, right? Dr. Blair, Jeff Dimmick, these guys are in leadership positions. Do you see a lot of them? Yeah, you do. I do. Right? When you're in a leadership position, you must be visible to those that work for you and even the ones that don't work for you. And the reason is because those people need to see you doing it. They need to see you supporting it. They need to see you supporting whatever the organization is It's important, and you don't have to do anything except be there. You don't even have to look pretty, okay? But you need to be there, you need to talk to people, and you need to provide encouragement or ask them what they're doing. It's visibility. It's that communicates to your troops or your workers, whatever, or your classmates if it's some sort of a student government thing. They need to know that you are there and you are available and you are engaged. Very, very important. Don't ask for permission. Hey boss, do you mind if I do this and this and this? Well, yeah, I do mind because this and this and this is what's going to happen. Don't give people an opportunity to tell you no. Don't ask for permission. Be bold, right? Be courageous, like our scripture said today. Make the decision and get out there and do it. If it's bad, then you can ask for forgiveness later. But if you don't take a risk, then it's not going to get done at all. If you don't ask, the answer is no. If you do ask, sometimes the answer is still no. So take action, be decisive, and do it. Next one. Okay, so towards the middle of this list of 30 things, and this isn't all 30 things, I talk a little bit about, I kind of move up to some larger stuff. So this is kind of in the middle here, okay? Maybe not all of you have kids, probably most of you don't, but you have an idea of what it's like to have kids because you came up in a family most likely with a parent or two. So you know maybe what it's like to have brothers and sisters, and one of these days maybe you'll have kids. But when you get to that point and you're in a leadership position, you need to feel about your people the way that you might feel about your kids. And what I mean by that is you have to have an almost unconditional love for your people in order to feel like you can effectively take care of them. So your kids and your people will mess up, right? They're going to do things that make you mad, or they're going to do things that are wrong. And when that happens, you need to hold them accountable. But it doesn't mean you don't love them, but you do need to hold them accountable. And then once you've held them accountable, you move on with life, and it's fine after that. You get past it, you get over it, they learn from it, maybe you learn something from it. But you should always feel about your people the way that you might feel about your kids. And that includes when they succeed. If they're going to do something great, like they get a promotion or they do some great project or something that, or whatever. I mean, you can think of 1,000 things. You need to be their biggest cheerleader too, just like you might with your kids or your brother or your sister or whatever. You get the idea, right? Okay, have a brain trust. A brain trust is important. A brain trust is a group of people that you know. It could be your parents, it could be a boss, it could be an instructor, it could be a friend maybe who's a few years older than you that maybe has a little bit more experience than you. But these are a group of people, a cadre of people that you can lean on for professional or personal advice anytime. I came up through the military 20 years. My brain trust is giant, okay? But you know who's on it? My dad's on it. I've got an old chief master sergeant that worked for me who's on it, who was older than me, that I talked to. I got a guy who was younger than me that worked for me about 5 or so years ago. In fact, I talked to him last night because he's a great guy and he knows things. He's intuitive and he's supportive and he's accepting, and he has a good idea of what action might need to be taken given a particular problem. These are people that you need to be able to go to at all times, a brain trust, okay? That's what they call it. You can look it up online. There's good pointers how to make yourself one. It doesn't need to be formal. It can just be in your head. I mean, mine's in my head, okay? Multitasking, that's very hard. You guys know that, right? Especially this time of year. Multitasking is painful. But man, you are going to get fire hosed big time, okay? You think you're getting fire hosed now. There's going to be times when you start your professional life that you're going to be fire hosed big time. It's going to be coming at you so fast you're not going to know what to do with yourself. You're going to try and juggle. It's hard to do. You got to multitask. You got to be able to compartmentalize things and take care of what's important first, prioritize, and do the things first that have to be done first. You also need to delegate, right? You need to delegate. If you're in a leadership position, chances are that you've got people working for you. Make them do some of the work that you're being assigned to do. You can't do it all yourself. You have to delegate. You have to give it out, okay? You don't want to be the guy that stays around till 8 o'clock at night doing the work that you could have delegated. Meanwhile, your guys are all going home at 3 in the afternoon because they're done working. You know, share the wealth, okay? Keep things in perspective. Sometimes problems can seem overwhelming, right? They can. We all have had them. We all know what that means. A problem can be big if you let it eat away at you. Keep things in perspective. Sometimes things aren't that bad. Hey, it's hard to take a step back and be objective about something, right? Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, man, and it's coming at you fast and furious, it is really hard to back off a little bit and take 10 seconds to just breathe, go to your happy place, and just hum for a second, right? Sometimes you can write it all down. You can write all the things down that you got going on, and that helps you keep things in perspective too. I make lists. That's how I do it. I'm a list guy. I have to have a list every day in order to function, and sometimes there's 2 things on there, and sometimes there's 10 things on there, and I don't get them all done, and that's stressful. But I keep it in perspective, okay? Because when I keep it in perspective, I know that some things just aren't that important, okay? Some things are more important. Your faith, your family, right? Your health. These are all things that have to take a priority in your life, and you know what? Sometimes the things that you think are really important just aren't. You have to be able to keep that in perspective. Go with your gut, we talked about that. Served me well. You know what I'm talking about when I say go with your gut, right? It's that feeling. We're all wired. All human beings are all wired to know things. They just know things intuitively a lot of times. So when you get that spidey sense kind of tingling at the back of your head that something just isn't quite right, you know what? Chances are it's not, okay? If you got a gut feeling that you got to make a decision on something that's really important and you have a good idea of what that decision has to be, then make the decision. You may never know 100%. Sometimes there is no right answer, right? So always listen to that gut. And if your gut is screaming at you that it's got to be one way and not the other, then you need to go with the way that your gut's going to tell you to go. And if you've ever not gone with your gut, you probably know what I'm talking about because it didn't work out, right? Okay. Next slide. All right, so at the end, the points become very strategic in nature, okay? They become very strategic, and what I mean is that these can apply to a lot of things, not just your professional career or your faith journey necessarily, or your student career or whatever. These are things that can apply to life, all right? So take things one step at a time. This kind of goes back to being able to juggle all of those things all at one time. Take things one step at a time. If you look at an entire problem, you think of it as an elephant, okay? An elephant's big. You got to eat this elephant. And you say, oh my gosh, how can I eat this elephant? It's so big. How am I going to do this, right? I can't eat this elephant. It might seem overwhelming. So take things one step at a time and eat the elephant one bite at a time. And before long, that elephant's going to be gone. You have to just draw back a little bit, keep things in perspective like we talked about, and take your time. Another thing is to laugh. Who doesn't like laughing? Nobody, right? Man, I got to laugh every day. You ask my students, and I laugh. I'm making fun of one of them all the time. Where are you? Raise your hand if you're one of my guys. Yeah, back in the back. I'm laughing at them right now, especially Bot. He's hilarious. Right? You got to laugh, man. Life is supposed to be here to enjoy. That's why God put us on this earth, okay? And if you can't laugh, you are not experiencing joy. You can't go through life in a joyless way. You always have to laugh. It helps lighten the mood. It helps de-stress you. It can help you put things in perspective, even when things are looking bad. There is not a day that goes by that you shouldn't be cutting up with somebody. Laughing is important. So joke around, do whatever makes you do those things, whatever makes you laugh, and you're going to survive. Right? Okay. Don't let your job be the only thing that defines who you are. I saw this so many times in my professional career. People lived to come into work every day. I spent 3 years at the Pentagon, and those people were so serious, they never laughed. They were there early, they left late, and you know what they had at the end of the day? Nothing. They had nothing because they took everything so seriously and didn't laugh that they lost what was important. Maybe their family, right? Maybe their spouse. It happens. So you got to prioritize things, right? You can't let that job be the only thing that defines who you are. Okay? Some of you guys might go and be a CEO of a company one of these days. Who knows, right? So when you become that CEO of the company, sure, it's part of who you are. It does define you. You're the CEO. You're all over websites and newspapers and all kinds of stuff like that. You're the CEO, man. You're the guy that makes those decisions. But you know what? It can't be the only thing that defines you. You know what does? Friend, faithful servant, dad. These are the things that really should define who you are, in addition to whatever it is you do. It's keeping things in perspective, just like we talked about. All right. Who gets stressed out? Who's ever been stressed out? A lot of people, right? What makes you feel better when you're stressed out, right? Maybe taking some time off. Who's going to take some time off after finals and just breathe, right? So at the end of your stressful period, you have to recharge those batteries. Do it. Okay, take opportunities. There's tons of them. Take every one that you can get. Make every business trip, every meeting, every day. Make it something that you can do something with, an opportunity to change something or somebody. One of the greatest things about being a leader is that you can change people. You are in a position to do that. I changed people when I led squadrons in the Air Force, and it was fantastic. You know why? Because I got to see the fruits of my labor, which were the fruits of their labor, and they succeeded, and they were good, and I was so proud of them. And you can do that. And you know what? They'll do it back to you. And they did. They changed me too. So take opportunities. Lead. Guys, this country is in dire need of leadership. You can be the leaders that change things. Some of you already are. You need to lead, set an example, do the right thing, change somebody. This is what leaders do, okay? And this country needs those kinds of leaders. So when you leave this institution, you need to get out in there and start making it happen, because you can, right? Don't wait to be told, just do it. The last thing is to have faith. I had a boss in about 2003 or so that told me, have faith. And he wasn't a real religious guy, not that I know anyway. And I was having a tough day, and I was frustrated because I didn't get an assignment or a job or something that I was trying to get. And I was feeling pretty upset about that. And he says, you know what? You just need to have faith. Things happen for a reason. Who's seen that happen? Right? When you look back on something and you go, oh, well, this is obviously why this happened. But, man, it sure felt bad at the time, right? Having faith can mean a couple things. For my boss at the time, having faith, I think, meant have faith in the system. You can have faith in a system, like the government or your job's, bureaucracy or something like that. Having faith in the system isn't a bad thing, because the system's there for a reason. It may not be perfect, but it is there for a reason. Have faith. More importantly, have faith in something more divine, okay? Having faith in God is a very cathartic thing, because it can calm you, it can guide you, it can speak to your gut, it can help you make decisions, it can help take stress off, it can help you juggle all those things that you've got going on. It's a very calming thing, faith. And when you have faith, you can let go of a lot of things that might be bothering you. It's worked for me, and I got to tell you, in the last 10 years or so, it's gotten better and better for me. And I'm glad. Faith surrounds all of these points. Next slide. All right. You like this guy? So all these have been applicable in my life, in my career. I hope they speak to you guys too. Some extend into other things. For me, fatherhood, teaching, they've all extended into those areas for me, right? Pick your battles. Some are hard to internalize, right? Delegating, tough to do that. It's tough to be stressed out. The biggest one I've struggled with is being a cynic. Man, boy, I got to tell you, man, I really struggled with that. Sometimes I still struggle with it when I turn on the news and I look at what's going on in the world. It's hard not to be a cynic, but you know what? You can overcome it. The easiest one is laugh. That's the easiest one. Faith is the best one. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So here it is. It doesn't mean just leading. It means all these things too. So I hope that these speak to you the way that they do to me. Thank you very much.